Hello everyone, and welcome to Season 3 of Connecting with Kim here on Tampa Bay Arts and Education Network. I'm your host, Kim Droege, and we're so glad you joined us today. Shout out to my sponsor, the Spring of Tampa Bay, and also a shout out to Sun Radio, where you can catch our show on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3:30 p.m. on 96.3 FM or on your favorite streaming platform. So it's an exciting start to the season, and I'm particularly gratified because this gentleman, who I'm going to introduce to you in a couple of seconds, has been with me from the beginning. He was my first guest when I started the radio show Connecting with Kim. He was my first guest when we started the cable television show Connecting with Kim in Season 1, and now he is helping me kick off Season 3. I'm happy to introduce to you Mr. Craig Latimer, the Supervisor of Elections for Hillsborough County, Florida. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's always great to have you. You're always a great guest, and it's always educational and fun. And we've had, you know the drill on my show, it works the same format. We've had so many people moving into the state of Florida, and in particular to Hillsborough County, who will be voting in their first election. And I was thinking about this morning before I came into the studio. I was thinking, ever since Craig and I have been together on the show, it's always in preparation for an election. We have a lot of new people, but just in case they don't know who you are or anything about you, I always like my guests to start off the show sharing a little bit about their life journey.
Yeah, so I've got a journey, that's for sure.
You do.
I was born and raised here in Tampa, attended local schools, graduated from University of South Florida, spent 35 years with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, retiring as a major. Went to the elections office as the chief of staff in 2009. I was elected to my first term in 2013, re-elected in 16 and 20.
Yes, congratulations for you. And I remember when you joined Phyllis Busanski and when she was the Supervisor of Elections. So let's start off with, this is a big year for us. It's a big election year. It's not a midterm. It's a huge election year. So let's start off with informing those folks out there listening and watching what is unique, number one, about voting in Florida and Hillsborough County.
So the thing to remember is that Florida is a closed primary state. That's the biggest thing. So in any primary elections, unless you're a member of one of the two major parties, the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, you can't vote in those elections. Except if you're in no party affiliation, you can vote in the primary for judges, school board, any nonpartisan races. And that's always a big one that people say, well, I'm a no party affiliation, so I can't vote in a primary. Yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
You can vote in those nonpartisan races. And as a matter of fact, a lot of those races, the school board member and the judges are decided at that primary election.
Absolutely, and I always say to people when they say that same thing to me, they don't like the closed primary system. I'm a fan of it myself, but I always say to them, many a political career is born at the school board. And my mother always used to say, when people come to her and say, I want to get involved, I want to get involved. And my mother would say to them, go start attending the school board meetings because that's where it's all happening. Secondly, I always say to them, a judge can change your life or the life of your loved ones with the stroke of a pen, and not necessarily in a good way. So that person that you're putting in that position, which until recently, I think you'll agree with me, pretty much was a lifetime position until you just didn't want to be judge anymore. It's an important thing you're doing. So the voting in those primaries is critical.
Yeah. But we're talking about new people that have moved into the area. And the first thing they need to do is go to my website, votehillsborough.gov. You can register online right there on my website. There's a tremendous amount of information there too. You can find out when the elections are. And let me just give you a tip. To vote in any of the upcoming elections, you need to be registered 29 days before the election. You can also change your party up to 29 days before the election. That's the two most important things. But you know what? While you're at our website, sign up for our newsletter. We have a monthly newsletter. It's all kinds of reminders in it, tremendous amount of information. And again, if you're new to the area, you're going to find out where early vote sites are, when early voting takes place. We've got 3 elections this year, maybe 4 for some people. We've got the presidential preference primary, which is March 19th. The primary election is August 20th, and then the general election is November 5th. We also may have a plant city election. We conduct all of the elections for the municipalities also. We'll find out in a couple of weeks whether in fact we'll have that election or not. But important information there. You know, you can also, very important for people that vote by mail, and I don't care how you vote. If you vote by mail or you vote election day or early vote, I'm just going to tell you your vote's going to be counted and counted accurately. But if you do vote by mail, you need to request that vote by mail ballot. And you can do that again right on votehillsborough.gov.
You know, Craig, I spend a lot of time on your website. I don't know if you track me. If you do, you'll see that I'm on there constantly. You have a very easy website to navigate, very clear. And I think something we ought to also mention for brand new people is you can go to that website, votehillsborough.gov, and you can look at everyone who's running in your local elections. Now, the only thing, I know there's a link and I hit it. I know how to hit it, but I really wish it was because like some people running for election, like your state representatives and your senators and the governor and so forth, are not on that tab, local candidates.
Right.
But there is a way to get to them.
So,
from that tab.
Yeah, and those people, all of their information is with the State Division of Elections, Secretary of State's office. So yeah, any of the county-wide type state attorney, public defender, the judges, those are all on the circuit judges are all on the state website. County judges and all the other county offices, school board, constitutionals are all on my website.
They are, and I wish those were more. I mean, I'd like that link to be closer because I'd like to hit one button and see everybody that's running in that I'm going to have to vote on or I'm going to have to make a decision about. But your website is excellent, and I use it all the time. And every time I sign on to it, I think, good God, I hope they're not like tracking, me, because they'll see that I'm on here all the time.
But we're glad to hear that, because that's the other thing that we tell people. Is get your information from a trusted source, and social isn't always a trusted source, but my .gov URL is a trusted source, so we try and tell people, get your information from a trusted source. I would be that trusted source.
You are that trusted source. You know that I follow you on social media, and I've also signed up for your newsletter, so I would encourage everyone. And you know I do, because I reply a lot of times to your newsletter on something I read in it. So it is if you haven't signed up, please do, because it's a valuable source of information. And like Craig said, you get it from the source and not from your neighbor or next door or some other place that you have no idea about. So let's also talk about, let's spend a few minutes talking about, you covered vote by mail, so let's talk a minute about the data breach, because I know it's still under investigation, so you may be, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't actually spend a few minutes on it. So unfortunately, you had a data breach. Was it earlier this year or last year?
In May of last year.
May of last year. So you might want to spend a few minutes talking to people and allay their concerns, because I can't believe how many people can still concerned about this.
Yeah. All aspects of security around an election is important to me. And at the top of that list is cybersecurity. So I was disheartened, to say the least, when I found out that we had been a victim of a criminal breach into our system. We haven't been alone in that, though.
No.
We recently, Tampa General had a huge breach, AT&T, TikTok, or Twitter. It goes on, including, in our state, numerous local government entities, including police departments, Department of Motor Vehicles. So that's just a real threat that's out there all the time. Mm-hmm. Because we're considered critical infrastructure, I've been able to train and work with our federal, state, and local partners in that endeavor. So we had a plan in place. We knew what to do if something like this did occur. It did occur. We were able to stop and contain the intrusion immediately. We engaged law enforcement right away, local, state, and federal law enforcement. We also worked with CISA, which is the Cybersecurity Information and Security Administration, again, because we're critical infrastructure. And we got the word out. We immediately put out press releases to the local media. I did several interviews with it. So we put a lot of information out there. Now, as I mentioned, I spent 35 years in law enforcement, mm-hmm. so I respect the criminal investigation process very, very much. So I will just share a few things with you that I think is important. We had a suspect or suspects enter our system, went into a file server, and they copied some files. Mm-hmm. In those files were some spreadsheets that we were working on doing list maintenance. We had duplicate voter registrations, incomplete registrations, and on those spreadsheets there was information. Some of them had the last 4 digits of a Social Security number, some of them had the Florida driver's license number on them, and that was the information that was taken. We immediately reached out to the people that were impacted and notified them, what had happened and what the situation was. Those we engaged with, we also, and this is a tip for anybody, the Federal Trade Commission will tell you, engage with your credit bureaus for free. For free, you can go on there and lock your information down so that you're not going to have issues like this. So, those are really important. But I guess the most important takeaway here is that this breach did not get into or affect the Florida voter registration system at all, or our tabulation system. And there's a couple reasons for that. The voter information system has numerous redundancies and monitoring constantly that go on. And that's how we caught this. We monitor our systems too. We caught it quickly. The tabulation system sits on a standalone air-gapped server. So it's not exposed to anything. It's not connected to anything. Excuse me. So, although this was a small and contained situation, the one thing I don't want to see, and I don't want to see people try and use this to undermine people's confidence in the election process, because it shouldn't be.
Exactly.
We've got tremendous safety features in place specifically for this. So, it's still under active criminal investigation with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. If anybody has any tips out there, call the FBI.
Exactly, because we want to catch these culprits, and we don't want our election systems being tampered with in any way, shape, or form. When people, this might be a good time. I'm going to just take a quick break and say, if you're just joining me now and connecting with Kim, my guest in the chair is Craig Latimer, who is the Supervisor of Elections for Hillsborough County, Florida. So this is what I get a lot of comments offline about a lot of things about my show and the guests that are on the show. And I say to people, what more do you want? What more do you want? In the last election, we were reported, the polls were closed, we were reported, and we called it before 9 o'clock. Now, what more do you want? I mean, it's like, to me, having been a poll worker in the past, having had my mother be a precinct chair and running polls, and I've worked at the polls, I can tell you, I've never seen anything. We're very well trained. We know what to do if somebody comes in with a mail-in ballot. We know what to do if somebody is not on our list. We're very well trained. It's never. So I think maybe we need to spend a few minutes kind of explaining to people who are new to Florida how does it work on Election Day in Florida.
Yeah. Well, it starts way before Election Day.
Yeah, of course it does, yeah.
Every county in this state by law has to conduct what's called a public logic and accuracy test out several weeks before the election. What does that mean? We go take a random sample of the tabulators that are going to be used Election Day and early vote, and all of the high-speed scanners that will be used for vote by mail. And we run what's called a test deck through those. We know what the outcome should be. The logic part of that is that it can see every single place on that ballot where a vote can be cast, whether it's for candidate, an issue, a write-in, whatever it is, it can see it. And of course, the accuracy, does it count correctly? And it does. I can tell you that right now. The machines are then locked down, seals put on them, a complete inventory. They're put out into open areas for voting on early voting and Election Day. And then they come back to our office after Election Day. And again, then, every county in this state has to conduct what's called a post-election audit. You can do that one of two ways. Your canvassing board can randomly select a race and precincts, and you go find all the ballots, vote by mail, early vote, and Election Day, and then you have teams sit down and hand count those. That can be a real chore if they randomly select a countywide race and then select, a precinct with 10,000 voters in it.
Right.
The other way you can do it, though, and this is how we do it, is with an electronic audit system. And this system is certified by the state. It's a complete different system. I'm required to put a minimum of 20% of the precinct ballots through the audit system. I put 100% of the ballots through that audit system to assure and prove that our tabulation system is counted correctly.
A lot of people have said to me, especially down in the area I live in South County, where we vote. I mean, highest turnout in the precincts, I think.
Yep.
Well, one year my mother's precinct was the highest turnout in the entire state. But in any case, we vote down there. And a lot of people have said to me from my community, well, we like touchscreen. We like the computer touchscreen. And I always look at them and say, you know what? I understand how easy it is and so on and so forth. But to me, that technology invites the potential corruption. Whereas when you fill out that ballot and you feed it through that machine yourself, when you walk out, you exit the poll, that seems to me to be a lot safer. And then that tape is running inside, because I know I've gone through that with my mother, and it has to be looked at, and before you turn the boxes in, it has to. So to me, that seems a lot safer.
Well, and that's one of the beauties of it. You talk about, safety and security of an election is that we have paper ballots. We can always go back to those paper ballots if we need to for any reason. But you're 100% correct too. At the end of the night, on election day, the clerk, the person in charge of the polling site, produces what we call results tapes, 2 copies of the results tapes from that specific tabulator. One of the copies is actually taped to the outside door of the polling site for anybody to see. And it'd have right there every candidate, how many votes they got, if there was a referenda item, how many yeses, how many noes, how many write-ins. So, it's all right there. And then the other part comes back to our office, and that's where we do a lot of auditing and checking. One of the things, and this is really important, I hear a little chatter about this with vote by mail especially, that old people are stuffing ballots in the ballot box. Well, that's not true. It's a myth. And let me tell you why. In Florida, the only people that can get a vote by mail ballot are registered voters that request it. And every person that requests a vote by mail ballot in my county, and this is every county in the state, we have to daily send that information to the Division of Elections, and it's disseminated to the 2 major parties and to other people that can request it too. When that ballot's cast, we have to then notify the state that we've gotten that ballot back and that ballot is cast. So there's just a constant auditing and balancing of that system, and there's not extra ballots that are in there. When people vote in person, they have to check in. And we also know if they've gotten a vote by mail ballot or they've returned a vote by mail ballot at that point. So again, we can go look at the number of people that checked in and the number of people that voted, or the number of ballots that we have at each precinct, to again show that that match takes place. So there's a lot that goes into elections. They're very complex. A lot of people don't realize that. I make the joke that people think that elections are I go vote, I go home, turn the TV on to see who won or lost. There's a lot more in between.
And there should be, because, a hallmark of our system and our country is this integrity of our election process. It's what separates us from the rest of the world. And it should be sacrosanct, and it should be, and this is another thing I like to say to people. Look, you have a constitutional right to vote, but also with that right comes a responsibility. Right? It's not a sit back in my easy chair and let the process wash over me, right? You have to be active, engaged, you have to take steps, you have to take the responsibility, and it is up to you to understand what you are doing on election day. It's not up to Craig Latimer to understand. It's up to, or the election workers or the poll workers, it's up to you to figure out, where do I go vote? You make it so easy from where do I go vote? How do I get a mail-in vote? Where's my polling? But there's a responsibility in voting.
So, and that we really, really try and get that word out. We call it plan your vote.
Right.
Know if you're going to go early vote. Know where the sites are. I tell people all the time, look at my website where all the early vote sites are. You might find out there's one close to where you're going to pick your child up from school, or on your way to work, or on your way home from work. Maybe a more convenient one than the one that's actually near your house. But plan that vote. If you're going to vote on election day, that last day to vote, make sure that your car's in good working order, you don't have any flat tires. But again, plan your vote.
My mother and I love to vote together. We usually early vote. She was always an election person day, but I finally convinced her, no, let's go early vote. And we also request a mail-in ballot for every election, because here's how I look at it. You never know what's going to happen in your life, right? No moment is guaranteed. So I always request, and she always requests, a mail-in ballot just to be covered in case something happens to us.
Insurance.
We we feel like voting is our duty. It's not only our right, but it's our duty, and it's again something that separates us from many, many countries in the world, right?
So let's talk about that a minute. And
yeah.
I do tell people, for insurance, get that ballot if you think there might be a problem that you're not going to be able to make to the poll. The other side of that, though, is I get people tell me, oh, I always order a vote by mail ballot so I know who's on the ballot. Well, if you vote in person, I'm sending you a sample ballot that has every single bit of that information, including where your early vote sites are. I would just ask people, you don't need to get a vote by mail ballot to see who's on the ballot. I'm going to send you that information. If you get a vote by mail ballot, you're not going to get that, obviously.
Exactly. I've never, okay, that's a new one on me. Because the ballots are always provided in advance, so you can see everybody running. Voting's been changing quite a bit in Florida over the last couple of years. The legislature's been actively involved in changing the rules. So again, for people who are brand new to Florida, never voted in Florida before, and we're happy you're here, although we would like it to slow down because we don't have enough infrastructure for you. What else do they need to know that's new and different about Florida?
Yeah, the other thing is to stay in touch with your Supervisor of Elections office when you move and things like that. Some of the people that are coming here may be temporarily in one place while they're looking for a house or something.
Right.
Make sure that you're updating your information with your Supervisor of Elections office. That's one of the big things. We have a lot of people will register to vote and then they'll move out of our area. And the very first thing they think of is, oh, I need to call Craig Latimer and tell him I moved. No, they don't. So we get mail back all the time. We're constantly getting mail back. So, that's one of the things that I like to tell people. And the other one is stay engaged. Don't just vote in a general election. Most important races out there are your primary elections a lot of times because, as I said previously, that's where some of these offices are right there. The person
decided right there that day.
The other thing I didn't mention is in a primary election, sometimes we have what's called a universal primary. That's where people are in the same party and there's nobody in the opposing party in that election. So at the primary election, every voter can vote for those in the precinct or district that they're running in. And again, we've had races decided right there that put a county commissioner in, put a property appraiser in, whatever it was. It takes place at those primary elections too. So don't just be a one-time voter.
Well, in fact, that happened in 2022, where some races were decided based on the primary, and lucky for them, their running and having to do all that stuff was over, and they could start preparing. So you're right, absolutely. You need to vote in every election because it's the way to make your voice heard. You can be on social media and on Nextdoor and all the other sites all you want, but voting is the way to make your voice heard.
Absolutely.
And also, I think we had I want to give you, we've talked about this in the past, but you haven't mentioned it yet, so I think we should talk about it. You yourself and Hillsborough County have been the recipient of numerous awards for how well you're running the Supervisor of Elections office in Hillsborough County. So spend a few minutes talking about that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, we very fortunate. We were awarded the Governor Sterling Award. Matter of fact, the first Supervisor of Election in the state. And this is a very prestigious award. They send examiners into your office, look at how you do business. It's all about performance management, using data to make decisions, making sure that your employees are all on board, that know your mission, vision, and values. So it's a very prestigious award, and we're proud of that, to say the least.
Well, and don't stop there, because I know that you have been asked to travel around the state to other counties. I know you've been even asked to travel outside of Florida to share with other states how we do it in Florida. And that's nothing to sneeze at, because we've gone from hanging chads to this.
Yeah, to those touch screens and into this. So yeah, and the Governor Sterling Award, one of the things, we're considered a role model in what we do. And so yes, we have. And matter of fact, I'm honored to, I was asked to come observe an election in Ontario, Canada.
Really?
So yeah, we do a good job. We've got a great team. We're constantly trying to improve and figure out how we can do things better. And we do.
I think something that happened in the last election that has a lot of people concerned, and I've never seen it happen in Florida, and I've been a poll worker for I'm not now, I wish I was, quite a few years, is that in other states, not ours, the polls were closed before the results were tabulated. And that, I've never seen that happen in Florida. I mean, when we closed the polls, and then, like you said, the tapes were, and then the boxes had to be delivered by representative of both parties to the Supervisor of Elections. So I think that is something maybe we take, because we're running out of time, but maybe take something to comment about that, because.
Yeah, so, and you nailed it, 100%. You know, that's how the closing goes. One of the things we're really fortunate in the state of Florida is we're allowed to begin processing and counting vote-by-mail ballots about 22 days before the election.
Okay.
So on election night, shortly after 7 o'clock, the canvassing board will order me to go ahead and release results. What we've got, the results at that point, are all of early vote and all of the vote-by-mail we have up to that point. I say to that point because we still have them coming back in until 7 p.m.
Right.
at my other offices. That usually accounts for 65 to 70% of the results. And then shortly after that, the precincts start rolling in. And as you said, yes, it was actually 9:30, I think we were totally complete. And the 2020 presidential election, the results were so quick that the national media called the state at shortly after midnight. So, you know, I know we had, I forget what the total was for all of the state, but we had over 770,000 people voted just in Hillsborough County.
Well, we are out of time. I love voting so much. It's so important to me. I could sit here and talk to you all day, but I appreciate you so much coming back, being on Connecting with Kim, and being helping me kick off season 3 of this wonderful show, which I love doing. So thank you, Craig.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
If you're just joining us, our guest today was Craig Latimer, the Supervisor of Elections for Hillsborough County. You can go to watch.tbae.net, and you can see the show if you miss it when it broadcasts real time. Don't forget Sun Radio, 96.3 FM, and on your favorite streaming platform. Thank you to my sponsor, the Spring of Tampa Bay. I have big things coming this year. We're going to talk about it. You can still visit the thrift store on North Willow and check out all the wonderful things they have, and come back next week for another edition of Connecting with Kim.